Well, hello everybody. My name is Joe Green. I'm a sous chef here at Rose and Crown at Epcot. So we have a lot of different cookbooks available here throughout the festival. And I'm cooking a recipe on page 300 of the regional Italian cuisine. Okay. This is actually a recipe specifically from Sicily, okay, which holds close to my heart because I'm actually Sicilian.
Oh my God.
So we're going to go ahead and get started right now. The ingredients we need for this is some nice tomatoes. Now these are canned tomatoes that I drain, cut, and kind of reserve some of the rest of the liquid. If it's the heart of the summer, use some nice heirloom tomatoes, different colored tomatoes, what have you. As far as right now, since we're right at the beginning of fall, tomatoes are kind of out of season, so we're going to go with some canned tomatoes. Other ingredients for this recipe are going to be some Spanish onions or some Vidalia onions that you get, a little bit of a sweeter variety. And we have capers, little green olives, and of course some eggplant, okay? So with any Italian cuisine, you always want to make sure you start out with nice olive oil. You're using extra virgin for this, it might be a little too bitter, so just a regular olive oil blend would be good. I'm going to take a little olive oil and add to the pan here. Okay. Now, when you're making a recipe out of a book, you can always add your own little flair to it, okay? In this aspect, if you want to have a little bit more of a spicy note to this, you can add a little chili flake to this to make it a little spicy. Okay? So we're going to get the onions going. In the meantime, we got celery, okay? And the one thing I like doing when I work with celery, especially if it's something in an aspect where it gets stewed down, a lot of times the exterior of the celery doesn't break down enough, okay? It's fibrous. So if you actually split the celery in half, and you take a peeler and actually lay the celery down like that and take the peeler to it, you take the whole fibrous off there, okay? So if you take all that off, it'll actually make it for a more tender piece of celery in your soups, salads, stews, what have you. Okay? So as the onions start browning a little bit, you don't want to get too much color on them. You kind of just want to let them get a little translucent. We're going to cut our celery kind of on a bias. You want nice big chunks for this so it doesn't disappear in the stew. Okay, so we're going to add celery into that. And if you have to, if it needs a little more oil, which looks like it is, add a little bit more. And then also, when you always want to cook, you want to season in stages. So you're going to have a little kosher salt here, a little fresh ground black pepper. Okay. As soon as the celery kind of starts taking on a little bit of more color as far as breaking down, that's when you want to add your tomatoes. Okay? You want to hear that. You guys hear that sizzle? If it's not sizzling, it's not cooking. So at this point, for this recipe, you want to let this stew down for about 10-15 minutes. Okay? And papanata has a sweet and sour taste to it. So to start that sweetness out, you want to add a little sugar. And as that sugar dissolves, it will start breaking down. Okay? And then sometimes if you take tomatoes, canned tomatoes, you drain them out, sometimes they release their liquid. So you can add a little bit of the tomato juice that came out of the can, make it a little bit more moist. Okay. So while that's going, like I said, it goes for about 15 minutes. Okay? Eggplant. These are lovely eggplant that we have here from the land, okay? Now, they may seem really small to you guys, but at some point, when eggplants are this small, they're actually less bitter, okay? and I'll show you why. If you look in the inside of an eggplant, if you guys have ever cooked with eggplant, larger ones will have a bigger cavity on the bottom. Will have more seeds, and that's where all the bitterness comes from. So with smaller eggplants like this, it works out fantastic with the dish like this. So in the recipe, you actually want to cut these eggplants in about a 1/2 inch dice. And then what you want to do is you're going to toss them in salt, put them in a colander or a sieve, what have you, over a bowl, and you're going to let them sit out at room temperature. And what the salt's going to do is it's going to draw some of the moisture out of the eggplant and draw some of the bitterness out of it as well. Now, since we're pressed for time, I already had some eggplant that I did that before earlier today. And what I did is in a separate pan, I took the rest of the olive oil for the recipe, got it nice and hot, strained the eggplant, rinsed it, dried it off really good, and then we pan fry it in olive oil, okay? So then once it's pan fried and it's brown on all edges, we pull the eggplant out, kind of dry it off a little bit, get some of the olive oil out of it, okay? And then you're going to add that into your stew as well. Okay? I'm sorry, yes. I'm sorry? About an hour? Yeah. If you put it in a cooler place, it might be a little bit longer. If it's in a warmer area in the kitchen, it will take faster because the heat will actually help it. Okay? So once eggplant's added, I got some capers that I drained on here. If you guys have never cooked with capers, this is a fantastic ingredient. They're actually a bud of a flower that hasn't blossomed yet. It's quite stringent, a little bit more vinegar in there, and then we have some lovely green olives that are pitted. And I just cut in half, okay? And this is a dish that you're gonna wanna do, you know, if you wanna have it for dinner on Sunday afternoon, make it on Saturday, let all those flavors mingle overnight, cool it down. I remember my mom always made chili when I was a kid, and it was good when she made it the day of. The next 2 days, it was awesome. So same thing with the stew like this. You want to make sure that all those flavors mingle together and have time to develop flavors, okay? And then also you always want to add a little more salt, a little more pepper, okay? So while that's going, what we're going to do is we're going to garnish this with some fresh celery leaves. Now, when you guys have celery at home, normally a lot of times people end up throwing the inside leaves out of the celery. But actually, this has a lot of flavor, okay? I'm going to take it out, wash it really good, soak it in some cold water, and it'll crisp it up for you, okay? So we're just going to kind of chop that up nice and rustic. You know, we're not cooking fine dining food here, you know, this is rustic, cook home for the family. All right, so perfect dice is not necessary for this. So we'll go ahead and put that aside. Okay, we got some fresh basil here as well. We're gonna go ahead and chiffonade that. And all chiffonade is just a fancy word to kind of shred something. So the best way to do this is kind of go from the bigger leaves down to the smaller leaves. And you never want to do this ahead of time. You want to do this last minute. Because what happens with fresh herbs is if you cut it too far ahead of time, the flavor kind of loses its balance in there, okay? And you also want to do this with a sharp knife. Because if you're using a dull knife, if you end up cutting it with the dull knife, it will actually turn the basil brown. And that's not good. Okay, so I got a nice sharp knife, and all I did is I stacked all the leaves up on top of each other and kind of rolled them in, kind of like a little roll, all right? And then at this point, you want your nice sharp knife to do all the work. You don't want to push down, okay? You just kind of want to let the knife do its work. I love basil. All right, so we got a little basil here. All right, then we mix it with the celery leaves, kind of make like a little herb salad. All right, and ideally what I was saying is this is better the next day, but for presentation purposes, I'm gonna go ahead and plate you guys up some. And this is, you know, you could serve this family style, you could serve it as a room temperature, as a salad. And even if you want to get some pasta, take any kind of pasta you want. You know, fettuccine, linguine, even bucatini. You know, add whatever you want to it. Even if you want to take a little, if you want some meat in there, some kind of ham, take prosciutto, lay it down on a flat sheet pan, about 300 degrees for about an hour, and you'll make little perfect prosciutto croutons. And you can crumble that up and put that on top as well. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more of this tomato juice because it needs a little more liquid. Season it a little bit more. And then to finish it off, we have some nice aromatic white vinegar. Now, in this case, I have a white balsamic vinegar because it matches the region in Italy, okay? If you want to just use a plain white distilled vinegar, that's fine. But in this case, I'm going to use a little white balsamic, and that's that little sourness comes. And also, you always want to taste your tomatoes. If your tomatoes are real acidic, you may not need a lot of vinegar, okay? All right, and then the most important thing is you gotta taste it. Okay, so I got my sweetness, and a little more salt, a little more pepper. Okay, and as easy as just taking this, scoop it up on a platter here. Okay. See those nice bright colors? All right, and then this herb salad that I made, you just want to do this last minute, and if you do it hot, and you put that nice herbs on there, you'll really be able to smell it. Okay? And that's about it, guys. Eggplant caponata. So, thank you. We're going to be passing out some samples here, okay? In the recipe, it says to cut the dices a little bit bigger than what I have for you, but in order for you guys to get every flavor, I cut all the vegetables a little bit smaller so you can get every flavor in one bite, okay? Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so you rinse all the salt off, because if you don't do that, it will come out way too salty. So you rinse the eggplant really good, even through the same colander that you're doing. I'm sorry? Yeah, you get it, you dry it off on a sheet pan. Or just, a plate, put a couple pieces of brownie towels down, and sop it up. Because if it's too wet, when you go to cook the eggplant, it will actually